The storm had already begun its cruel work by the time the last faint light disappeared beyond the ridge. Snow whipped across the mountainside like icy daggers, tearing at exposed skin and stealing away every breath with a sharp sting. The woman lay sprawled against the jagged rocks near the cliff's edge, her limbs trembling with exhaustion and cold. She tried to move, to rise, but her body betrayed her. Her breath came in faint clouds that vanished instantly in the biting wind. She had been left there, left to freeze, to be swallowed by the merciless mountain night. Her mind drifted in and out of consciousness, fogged by the cold and the shock of betrayal. She could still remember their faces, the people she had trusted. Hours earlier, she had been part of a group, laughing, stumbling through the snow together, united against the weather. They had promised to look out for one another, to climb and descend as a team. But when the storm roared and she began to falter, their laughter turned into impatience, and impatience turned into fear. She had slowed them down. She had fallen once, then twice, and each time she lagged further behind. The cold had stiffened her legs, her chest burned with every breath, and her pleas to wait were swallowed by the blizzard. She could still see it in her memory, their flashlights piercing the storm like faint stars, bobbing as they walked faster, not even glancing back. The last words carried on the wind had been curt, cruel even. They told her to try harder, to keep up. But then, without warning, the lights grew smaller and smaller, until the storm erased them completely. And there she was, alone, crawling until her strength gave out at the cliff's edge. Darkness crept into her vision, and for a moment she thought she would welcome it. But then she heard it, low, guttural, and close. The sound pulled her eyes open, wide with fear. Through the swirling snow, shapes emerged. Shadows at first, then unmistakable figures. Wolves. Their eyes glowed like molten gold in the pale light of the storm, each gaze fixed on her fragile form. Panic shot through her weakened body, though she could not even lift her arms in defense. She thought this was it, that if the storm did not take her, the wolves surely would. Yet the wolves did not lunge. They circled her slowly, their paws silent against the snow. Their breath came out in heavy puffs of steam, mingling with hers. They did not bare their teeth. Instead, their movements were measured, cautious, protective. One of them lowered its head close to her face, studying her with eyes that held not malice, but something else, something she could not name. She realized then, in her half-frozen daze, that she was not prey. To them, she was something fragile, something to be guarded. The storm howled, and the wolves lifted their heads in unison. The pack leader, a massive beast with fur thick as the snow itself, released a piercing howl that echoed through the mountains. It cut through the blizzard like a signal, a call that carried purpose. The woman's eyes fluttered closed again, too weak to fight the weight of exhaustion, and the last thing she remembered was the thunderous sound of boots breaking the snow. A figure appeared through the storm, tall and broad-shouldered, wrapped in a heavy fur coat lined with frost. A torch burned in his gloved hand, the fire battling the screaming wind. His beard was thick, dusted white by the snow, and his eyes were sharp and searching. The wolves parted for him, as if welcoming their master. The mountain man knelt beside her, his movements quick and practiced. He pressed his gloved fingers against her neck, searching for life. When he found the faint pulse, he did not hesitate. He shed his heavy cloak and wrapped it around her trembling body, then scooped her up with a strength born from years of surviving this wild land. The wolves pressed close, their bodies shielding her from the cold as the man rose. Every step through the storm was a battle. The snow was waist-deep in places, and the wind clawed at him, but he did not falter. His wolves moved around him like shadows, some leading the way, others trailing behind, every one of them vigilant. Their eyes caught every flicker of movement, every threat from the wilderness. Together, they carved a path back through the storm, the man carrying the woman's fragile form as though she weighed nothing at all. The trek back to the cabin was long, endless even. The woman stirred in his arms, groaning softly, her breath shallow but alive. The man whispered to her, his voice low and rough like gravel, though she was too far gone to understand his words. To the wolves, it seemed as if he spoke to them as much as to her, commanding them, guiding them, trusting them. At last, the warm glow of firelight shimmered in the distance. The cabin stood strong against the storm, smoke rising from its chimney, a beacon of survival in the wilderness. The man pushed through the door, his wolves filing in behind him, shaking snow from their coats. He laid her gently on a bed of furs near the roaring fire, her pale face illuminated by the golden flames. The wolves curled around her without hesitation, their thick bodies forming a living wall of warmth. He worked quickly, stoking the fire higher, melting snow in a pot to prepare warm water. He placed heated stones beneath the furs, warming her from beneath. Slowly, the chill began to leave her body, her skin losing its deathly pallor. Her breathing grew steadier. The man watched her closely, his wolf's eyes reflecting the firelight as they never moved from her side. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside the cabin, there was only warmth and life. When her eyes finally opened, the first thing she saw were the glowing embers of the fire and the calm, watchful gaze of a wolf resting beside her. The animal's great head lay near her hand, and she felt the surprising comfort of its presence. She turned her gaze and saw the man seated by the fire, carving wood with slow, steady strokes, his eyes flicking to her when he noticed her stir. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. He gave her a cup of warm broth, steadying her trembling hands as she drank. Words were not needed. His presence, the wolves' warmth, and the fire's glow told her everything. She had been abandoned to die, discarded by those who claimed to be companions. Yet here, in the heart of the wilderness, among those feared by most, she had been saved. When morning came, the storm had lifted, revealing a sky of pale gold and endless snowfields stretching toward the horizon. She sat up slowly, wrapped in the mountain man's heavy cloak, her body weak but alive. The wolves lay scattered around the cabin like silent guardians, their chests rising and falling in unison. The man stood by the frosted window, his silhouette framed by the sunlight. She realized then that survival is not always about strength of numbers or the promises of friends. Sometimes, survival comes from the wildest of places, from those who walk outside the world of men. She had seen the worst of human fear and selfishness, and yet she had also seen the loyalty of creatures thought dangerous, the compassion of a man who had chosen solitude over society. In the silence of that cabin, she understood that she had been given a second chance, one born not from cruelty, but from nature's fierce and unexpected mercy. The wolves had not let her die.